what's a good asset to get? So we started looking at things that are still in real estate, but does not allow someone to live inside of your investment. So allows much more control and a much lower amount of risk or risk mitigation for ourselves and our investors. And so we came upon three things. It was data centers, mobile home parks, and self-storage. Right off the bat, data centers was out because, to build a reasonable sized data center, you need something like 150 million in equity. And then, a small data center is like a $500 million data center. So that was out. Then I knew a lot of investors that were already in the mobile home park space. So I called them and said, hey, what do you think about this? And they said, Fernando, listen, on paper, yes, they claim that mobile home parks, you just own the land, you don't own the property, you're never going to be a landlord. But in reality, you end up having a lot of park-owned homes and you become a landlord again and you're renting those park-owned homes to the tenants. So we scratched that and then we were left with self-storage. And then as I started to dig in, I started to see that the numbers for self-storage were just absolutely fantastic. Not only from the way that the state law treats our asset class, so codified in state law, but then also the way that it reacts in recessionary environments. And this is a very apt time to be recording this podcast because I think the S&P 500 has dropped about 10% in the last week. It is very recession resilient asset, but it also does very well when the economy is doing well because people start buying more things, they start storing those things. When the economy is not doing so well, we're in what we call the trauma and transition business. So when you're downsizing houses, when you're moving in with friends because you can't afford your rent anymore, when you're changing locations for a job, when you get divorces, that type of stuff, self-storage does really well. So for example, during COVID, which is probably the biggest recession we've seen in recent times, when we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks, self-storage was operating at a 80% year-over-year rent growth because the amount of people that had to move stuff out of their houses to create a home office or to create an area for their kids to go to school virtually, and they put all that stuff into storage. So it worked really well for us. Same thing when you look at the last major recession, the great financial crisis, 07 to, 09. I know you were very active during that time. That the S&P 500 dropped 22% over that period. And during that time, self-storage only dropped about 3.4%. So that's the minor hiccup to swallow compared to, say, 1/5 of your portfolio just being wiped out.